Hi, today we're going to be talking about how to prevent and stop UTIs for good. So to start, I used to think that UTIs and other infections were caused by hygiene, and that's part of the equation. But you really can have a healthy environment, put a bad bacteria in it, and you don't get an infection. So how can we create an environment that prevents UTIs? That's what today's video is going to be talking about, and how to address UTIs for those who might need it. Okay, so to start, I wanted to share a few resources for people to test for UTIs. I'm going to put the links in the description. These are 2 ways that you can test at home in the privacy of your home for UTIs, and some of these have some like built-in kits for dealing with UTIs if you happen to have one. So UTIs are an infection. They need to be handled appropriately and quickly so that chronic issues don't persist and people can die from infections. So please make sure to deal with that promptly and properly. So I wanted to share those resources with you to start with. Secondly, some of the urgent needs that we have if we're experiencing a UTI are to drink water, plenty of water. What we can do is we can help with flushing out the bacteria that has built up in our bladder and urinary tract by increasing our fluid load. Next, we can also help by taking vitamin C, and this can possibly interact with the bacteria, but it will also help to support our immune system, which will probably be at a higher functioning level and sending out responses because there is an infection. So vitamin C is really important in this process and making sure that we have ample amounts to send that type of immune response. And number 3, antibiotics. I know people don't like hearing this, but antibiotics came out for a reason. People used to die from infections. Please, if you need to take them, please take them. Talk to your doctor because antibiotics have saved people's lives and we can recover from antibiotics afterwards. So if you need support in that, I have a great video about gut health right here that can be very helpful. Okay, so let's get into what I had talked about. I originally thought it was hygiene, and hygiene may play a part, but how can we create an environment where UTIs are not cultivated? First, we need to have some long-term mentality in mind. How can we have our body be inhospitable for this type of bacteria to grow in our urinary tract? And the first is making sure that we have high pH level in our stomach. So the first thing that we need to do is create an environment internally that doesn't harbor bad bacteria in disproportionate levels. And that starts with a diet change. So whole foods, having foods that are cultured, hopefully home cultured, that would be wonderful as long as they're safely prepared. Things like apple cider vinegar, sauerkraut, lemon water, ginger for digestion and inflammation, that can help as well because it means that we'll be reducing the inflammatory load on our body, and therefore our immune system will be able to take care of issues that it otherwise might be kind of putting to the side, like balancing our gut hormones, not gut hormones, gut bacteria and microflora. So those are things that we can do to support the long-term environment of our body. And the internal environment of our body can cause changes in our blood pH and in pH in other areas, including our bladder. So making sure that we have proper pH levels of food coming in, which whole foods, plant-based diets, primarily, those are going to be the ones that support that type of internal environment. Next is by having things that are going to support a healthy gut microbiome. So I talk about in one of these other videos that I'll link here, kind of the hierarchy of where gut health can impact UTIs that can cause yeast infections and that type of cycle that we can go through. So supporting gut health with things like sauerkraut, kombucha, yogurt, and other cultured foods, that can help us have a balance of gut microflora that is healthy. That will mean that even if we don't have the greatest hygiene, the bacteria will be balanced in our gut. And so if a little bit of that gets into other parts of our body from natural hygiene, from going to the bathroom, we have the proper ratio. And so the other species of bacteria are going to compete and prevent other ones from becoming an infection, which means that they skyrocket. So from an ecological standpoint, if you think about it this way, just like we have weeds in our yard, and we don't like dandelion weeds most of the time in our yard, they can take over because they have seeds that replicate really fast. But if we grow other things in that soil, it prevents those seeds from being able to take root and grow exponentially. The same thing can happen in our bladder. So if we have a proper ratio of bacteria that happen to get into our bladder, that in and of itself can prevent an infection. So it starts with gut health. And the next two things are going to be things that might be a little bit more helpful at the beginning of someone's journey. So say they're making these dietary changes, they're still getting some UTIs while their body's rebalancing. So one of the things that newer research has been showing is that D-mannose, which is something that someone would take as a supplement to their diet, like a powder basically, that can help with preventing the bacteria E. coli from binding with our bladder's lining. So we have receptors on the lining of our bladder for D-mannose, and that is part of where that bacteria binds and starts to infect our bladder. So if we're taking D-mannose, it can bind to those receptors and prevent the bacteria from binding, and therefore we have the less susceptibility for our bladder to become infected, because less of those receptors will be available for bacteria. So some of those things could be really helpful in that transition period. That, as well as cranberry extract. So this is another thing that would be taken as a supplement in this transition period that can help with preventing our bladder lining from harboring bacteria. So these are things, as we're going through this long-term change, that might be helpful at the beginning when someone is maybe struggling with UTIs that are going on. So these are all things that could be really helpful and hopefully help get rid of UTIs for good. I really hope this video was helpful for you. If you liked it, feel free to give the little like button a nudge and help it get out to other people that might need it just like you. And I hope until next time, you're able to be well.